Forget everything Hollywood taught you about Wild West gunfights. While cowboys were squaring off with six-shooters on dusty main streets, the real kings of frontier firepower weren't pistols or rifles at all. They were mechanical monsters that could spit hundreds of rounds per minute, turning battlefields into killing zones and making single-shot weapons instantly obsolete. Today, we're counting down the 15 deadliest machine guns that dominated the American frontier, and some of these weapons were so devastating, they changed warfare forever before the Wild West even ended. Number 15, the Agar coffee mill gun. The Union Army's experimental nightmare. Imagine a weapon so unreliable that soldiers nicknamed it after kitchen equipment, yet it represented the first real attempt to bring rapid-fire technology to American battlefields. The Agar gun, patented in 1861 by Wilson Agar, earned its coffee mill nickname from the hand crank operation that ground out bullets like beans through a grinder. Chambered in .58 caliber and fed from a hopper-style magazine that dropped prepared steel tubes containing powder and ball directly into the firing chamber. This bizarre contraption could theoretically fire 120 rounds per minute when everything went right, which wasn't often. Union commanders, desperate for any advantage during the Civil War's early years, purchased several dozen Agar guns for field testing. The results were mixed at best. When the mechanism worked smoothly, the psychological effect on Confederate troops was devastating. Watching a single weapon pour continuous fire made soldiers dive for cover and often break formation entirely. But the Agar's Achilles heel was its feeding system. Those steel tubes jammed constantly, especially in dusty or muddy conditions, turning the weapon into an expensive paperweight at the worst possible moments. After the Civil War, a handful of Agar guns filtered westward into frontier forts, where commanders hoped they might provide defensive firepower against Native American raids. The reality proved disappointing. The weapon's mechanical complexity demanded constant maintenance that frontier conditions simply wouldn't allow. Still, the Agar gun proved that rapid-fire weapons could change battlefield tactics, even if this particular design wasn't the answer. It paved the way for something far more deadly. Number 14, the Williams rapid-fire gun, the Confederate one-pounder that almost worked. While the Union experimented with the Agar, Confederate Captain R.S. Williams developed his own rapid-fire weapon that took a completely different approach. Instead of rifle-caliber bullets, Williams built a hand-crank cannon that fired 1-pound explosive shells at a rate of 18 to 20 rounds per minute. Revolutionary speed for artillery of the 1860s. The weapon consisted of a single barrel mounted on an artillery carriage with a hand crank operating a sliding breech mechanism that loaded pre-packaged rounds from a hopper. Confederate forces deployed several Williams guns during the Siege of Petersburg and other major battles, where they provided suppressive fire against Union positions. The explosive shells, while not individually as devastating as standard artillery, created a continuous barrage that pinned down infantry and disrupted advances. The gun's relatively light weight, around 300 pounds without carriage, meant cavalry or infantry units could move it quickly to defensive positions. After the war ended in 1865, a few Williams guns survived in private hands and occasionally appeared at frontier forts or in the hands of wealthy cattle barons who wanted the ultimate ranch defense weapon. The practical limitations were significant, though. Ammunition was expensive and hard to manufacture without proper facilities, and the mechanical stress of rapid fire caused frequent breakdowns. The Williams gun proved that explosive rapid-fire weapons had battlefield value, but true military effectiveness required simpler, more reliable designs. Its legacy lived on in later rapid-fire cannons and the concept that small explosive rounds delivered quickly could match larger caliber artillery. Number 13, the Billinghurst Requa battery gun, 25 barrels of simultaneous death. Picture a weapon that didn't fire bullets one after another, but unleashed an entire wall of lead in a single devastating volley. The Billinghurst Requa battery, developed in 1862, consisted of 25 rifle barrels arranged in horizontal rows on a wheeled artillery carriage. Each barrel was individually loaded with a standard .58 caliber paper cartridge. Then all 25 fired simultaneously, using a single percussion cap system that ignited every charge at once. The effect on enemy formations was absolutely catastrophic. Union forces deployed requa batteries primarily for bridge defense and fortification work, where massed infantry charges were expected. Confederate soldiers who survived encounters with these weapons described the experience as facing an invisible wall, with 25 bullets arriving in a horizontal spread pattern that cut down entire ranks instantly. The psychological impact matched the physical devastation. Knowing that a single requa battery could wipe out 24 men in one trigger pull made charging such positions an act of desperation rather than tactics. The weapon's drawback was reload time, requiring a trained crew several minutes to recharge all 25 barrels, making it vulnerable to artillery or flanking maneuvers. After the Civil War, several requa batteries made their way to frontier forts, though their tactical value diminished against the more mobile warfare style of Plains Indian conflicts. The battery gun represented an important evolutionary step, proving that simultaneous fire from multiple barrels could achieve devastating results. This concept would directly influence revolving barrel designs like the Gatling, which essentially automated the volley fire principle into continuous rotation. The Billinghurst requa showed that machine gun development wasn't just about firing faster, it was about delivering overwhelming firepower that no infantry formation could withstand. Number 12. The Vandenberg volley gun. The revolving cluster that predated the Gatling. Before Richard Gatling perfected his famous rotating barrel design, inventor Origen Vandenberg patented a similar concept in 1860 that would eventually see limited service on both warships and frontier installations. The Vandenberg gun featured anywhere from 85 to 451 rifle barrels clustered together in a cylindrical arrangement, depending on the model. Unlike the Billinghurst requa that fired all barrels simultaneously, the Vandenberg rotated its barrel cluster past a single firing mechanism, discharging each barrel in rapid sequence. The result was sustained fire at rates approaching 300 shots per minute from the larger models, truly revolutionary for the early 1860s. The United States Navy purchased several Vandenberg guns for mounting on warships, recognizing their value for repelling boarding actions or raking enemy decks during close engagements. On land, the weapon's tactical applications were more limited but no less dramatic. A handful of frontier forts mounted Vandenberg guns as defensive installations, particularly at strategic river crossings or mountain passes where attacking forces would be channeled into killing zones. Native American war parties that encountered these weapons quickly learned to avoid direct assaults on positions they defended. The major drawback was weight and complexity. Even smaller models weighed over 300 pounds, requiring substantial mounting systems and making field mobility essentially impossible. Additionally, the manufacturing precision required to create hundreds of aligned barrels made each gun extremely expensive, limiting production. The Vandenberg gun proved the rotating barrel concept worked, but also highlighted that successful machine guns needed simpler construction and better portability. Its influence on later designs was undeniable, with the Gatling gun essentially perfecting what Vandenberg had started. Number 11. The Montigny mitrailleuse. Belgian engineering meets frontier firepower. While American inventors dominated the early machine gun race, European manufacturers were developing their own rapid-fire weapons, and one of the most sophisticated was Belgium's Montigny mitrailleuse. First produced in 1851 and continually refined through the 1860s. The mitrailleuse featured 37 barrels arranged in a cylindrical cluster, fed by a plate containing 37 cartridges that loaded all barrels simultaneously when inserted from the breech. A hand crank rotated the firing mechanism past each barrel in sequence, achieving sustained fire rates of 150 rounds per minute with a well-trained crew. The French Army famously adopted the weapon for the Franco-Prussian War of 1870, though tactical misuse led to disappointing battlefield results. Several mitrailleuse guns made their way to America through military surplus sales and private imports, with wealthy industrialists and railroad companies occasionally purchasing them for protecting valuable installations or suppressing labor disputes. On the American frontier, The mitrailleuse's sophisticated engineering proved both a blessing and a curse. When properly maintained and operated by trained crews, it delivered devastating firepower that could hold off massed attacks. The weapon's relatively compact size compared to artillery pieces made it suitable for fort defense or protecting mining operations in remote territories. However, the complex plate-feeding system required precisely manufactured ammunition plates that weren't readily available in frontier towns, and the tight mechanical tolerances demanded by the multi-barrel design meant that dust, moisture, or rough handling could cause malfunctions that frontier gunsmiths lacked the expertise to repair. The Montigny mitrailleuse represented the pinnacle of pre-Gatling European machine gun design, proving that sophisticated engineering could achieve impressive results, but also demonstrating that frontier warfare demanded rugged simplicity over mechanical elegance. Number 10. The Lowell machine gun. Massachusetts engineering takes on the Gatling. Not every inventor accepted Richard Gatling's rotating barrel design as the final word in rapid-fire weapons. In 1871, the Lowell Machine Gun Company of Massachusetts developed an alternative approach that used a single barrel with an innovative feed mechanism they believed superior to Gatling's system. The Lowell gun featured a gravity-fed hopper that dropped cartridges into the breech, while a hand-cranked mechanism extracted fired cases and chambered fresh rounds at a theoretical rate of 200 shots per minute. The weapon's single barrel made it lighter and less expensive to manufacture than multi-barrel designs, addressing one of the Gatling's primary drawbacks. Several U.S. Army posts conducted field trials comparing Lowell guns directly against Gatlings during the early 1870s, with mixed results. The Lowell's simpler construction meant fewer parts could break, and its lighter weight made transport easier for cavalry units operating in rough terrain. However, sustained fire caused the single barrel to overheat rapidly, decreasing accuracy and increasing the risk of cartridge case expansion that could jam the mechanism. Gatling's multiple barrels stayed cooler because each barrel had time to cool while others fired. Despite aggressive marketing and competitive pricing, the Lowell machine gun never achieved significant military adoption, with the Army ultimately preferring Gatling's proven design. A handful of Lowell guns appeared on the frontier in private hands, occasionally used by mining companies or large ranching operations for property defense. The Lowell gun's failure in the marketplace wasn't due to poor engineering, but rather demonstrated that Gatling had solved the fundamental machine gun challenges better than alternatives. Sometimes revolutionary innovation comes from perfecting existing concepts, rather than reinventing them. Number 9. The Hotchkiss revolving cannon. French-American firepower for mountain warfare. When American-born engineer Benjamin Hotchkiss established his weapons manufactory in France during the 1860s, he brought distinctly American rapid-fire concepts to European artillery design, eventually creating weapons that would see service on both continents. The Hotchkiss revolving cannon, introduced in the 1870s, featured 5 large-caliber barrels arranged in a rotating cluster, each firing 37mm explosive shells at a combined rate of 43 rounds per minute. Unlike rifle-caliber machine guns, the Hotchkiss delivered explosive firepower that could destroy fortifications, stop charging cavalry, or clear enemy positions behind cover. The United States Army evaluated several Hotchkiss cannons during the late 1870s and early 1880s, particularly for deployment in the Western Territories, where mountain warfare against Apaches and other tribes demanded flexible artillery. The weapon's relatively light weight for a cannon, around 1,200 pounds with carriage, meant pack mules could transport it over trails where standard field artillery couldn't travel. Frontier commanders appreciated the Hotchkiss's ability to quickly shift positions and deliver suppressive fire without the lengthy setup time traditional artillery required. During the Indian Wars, Hotchkiss cannons occasionally accompanied major expeditions, though their combat deployment was less frequent than rifle-caliber machine guns. The explosive shells proved devastating against fortified positions or grouped warriors, but the weapon's greatest value was often psychological. The distinctive sound of exploding shells created panic and confusion that disrupted enemy tactics even when casualties were moderate. The Hotchkiss revolving cannon bridged the gap between machine guns and artillery, proving that rapid-fire principles could scale up to larger calibers and showing frontier commanders that automatic weapons technology wasn't limited to anti-personnel roles. Number 8. The Nordenfeldt gun. Swedish innovation meets naval warfare. While most machine gun development focused on land combat, Swedish engineer Helge Palmkrantz created a design specifically optimized for naval defense that would eventually find limited frontier applications as well. The Nordenfeldt gun, manufactured from the 1870s onward, featured multiple barrels arranged side by side rather than rotating, with each barrel receiving its own gravity-fed ammunition supply. A single operator pushed and pulled a horizontal lever that cycled all barrels through their firing sequence, achieving rates of 300 rounds per minute from 4-barrel models. The British Royal Navy adopted Nordenfeldt guns extensively for warship defense against torpedo boats, and this military success led to limited American purchases. Several coastal fortifications received Nordenfeldt installations during the 1880s, though frontier deployment was rare. The weapon's primary advantage over Gatlings was simpler mechanical operation that some militaries believed more reliable, though testing proved both designs equally dependable. A few Nordenfeldt guns appeared at strategic river forts along the Mississippi and Missouri rivers, where their originally intended anti-boat role matched frontier security needs against potential river-based attacks. The weapon's brass construction and gravity feed system functioned well in humid river environments where rust could plague steel weapons. However, the Nordenfeldt never achieved significant American frontier presence, partly because Gatling had already established market dominance and military supply contracts. The Nordenfeldt gun demonstrated that multiple approaches to rapid-fire weapon design could work effectively, and international competition was pushing machine gun technology forward rapidly during the 1870s and 80s. Different tactical requirements demanded different solutions, with no single design optimal for every combat situation. Number 7. The Gardner gun. British simplicity meets American trials. When former Union soldier William Gardner patented his 2-barrel machine gun in 1874, he believed simpler was better and that Gatling's multiple rotating barrels were unnecessarily complex. The Gardner gun featured just 2 barrels mounted side by side, fed from a vertical magazine and operated by a hand crank that alternated fire between barrels at rates up to 240 rounds per minute. The British Army, seeking a lighter alternative to the Gatling for colonial warfare, adopted the Gardner gun and deployed it extensively across their empire during the 1880s. American military officials observed British success with interest and conducted extensive trials comparing Gardners against Gatlings at Springfield Armory during the early 1880s. The Gardner's lighter weight, roughly 300 pounds less than comparable Gatlings, impressed cavalry officers who valued portability for rapid deployment. The alternating 2-barrel system provided most of a Gatling's cooling benefits while reducing manufacturing costs and mechanical complexity. However, American military trials revealed that under sustained fire, the Gardner's feeding mechanism was more prone to jams than the Gatling, particularly with dirty or damaged ammunition that frontier conditions often produced. Despite positive test results in several categories, the U.S. Army ultimately chose to continue with Gatlings, rather than split production between competing systems. A handful of privately owned Gardner guns appeared on the American frontier, purchased by wealthy individuals or corporations through British surplus channels. Mining companies operating in remote territories occasionally deployed Gardners for protection against claim jumpers or hostile raids. The Gardner gun proved that machine gun design was far from settled during the 1870s and 80s, with multiple competing approaches offering different advantages. Its commercial failure in America wasn't due to inferior engineering, but rather demonstrated how established military contracts and logistical standardization created high barriers for competing designs, no matter their merit. Number 6. The Gatling Model, 1865, where the legend began. While later Gatling models would achieve fame, the 1865 version represented Richard Gatling's first truly successful production design after several experimental prototypes. This model featured 6 rifled barrels arranged around a central axis, chambered in .58 caliber to match standard Union Army ammunition, and could fire 200 rounds per minute when operated by a trained crew. The hand crank operation rotated barrels past a single firing mechanism, with each barrel going through a complete load-fire extract-eject cycle during each revolution. This rotating principle allowed sustained fire without overheating because each individual barrel fired only once every 6 rotations, remaining cool enough to maintain accuracy. Union General Benjamin Butler privately purchased 12 Gatling Model 1865 guns in 1864 for use during the Petersburg Campaign, marking the weapon's first significant combat deployment. Results were promising enough that the Army ordered 100 guns before war's end, though most arrived too late to see Civil War action. After 1865, these early Gatlings became the first machine guns widely deployed across frontier forts, where their defensive firepower proved invaluable. The Model 1865's primary limitation was ammunition, as it still used paper cartridge technology that complicated loading and was vulnerable to moisture damage. Native American warriors quickly learned that Gatling positions required flanking or long-range rifle fire rather than direct assault, fundamentally changing frontier combat tactics. The weapon's psychological impact matched its firepower. The distinctive mechanical sound of Gatling operation and the visible stream of bullets convinced many war parties to avoid fortified positions entirely. The Model 1865 proved the Gatling concept worked, but revealed that metallurgical cartridges were necessary for truly reliable machine gun operation. Number 5. The Gatling Model 1874. The 4570 upgrade that changed everything. When the U.S. Army adopted the Springfield trapdoor rifle in .4570 caliber as its standard infantry weapon, machine guns needed upgrading to match. Richard Gatling responded with his Model 1874, redesigned around the powerful .4570 government cartridge and featuring improved feed mechanisms that dramatically increased reliability. This version could sustain fire at 350 rounds per minute without the jamming issues that had plagued earlier models, making it the first truly dependable military machine gun. The Army's official adoption of the Gatling Model 1874 and 1876 meant that frontier forts, cavalry columns, and major expeditions received these weapons as standard equipment. The timing was significant, as major Indian Wars campaigns during the late 1870s would test machine guns under the harshest possible conditions. The most famous absence of a Gatling gun occurred at the Battle of the Little Bighorn in 1876, where Lieutenant Colonel George Custer left his Gatlings behind, believing they would slow his cavalry's mobility. Many historians speculate that Gatling firepower might have changed the battle's outcome, though the weapon's weight and crew requirements made them impractical for Custer's rapid strike tactics. Other frontier engagements proved the Model 1874's value. During the Red River War and various Apache campaigns, Gatling guns positioned at key defensive points consistently held off numerically superior forces. The psychological effect intensified as word spread among tribal warriors about the unstoppable fire these weapons delivered. Charging a Gatling position became recognized as certain death, forcing tactical adaptations toward guerrilla warfare rather than direct assault. The Model 1874 established the Gatling gun as the dominant frontier machine gun, with its reliability and firepower unmatched by any competing design. Number 4. The Maxim gun. The first true automatic that ended the frontier era. Everything that came before was mechanical perfection. But in 1884, American inventor Hiram Maxim changed warfare forever by creating the first truly automatic machine gun, one that used its own recoil energy to load, fire, and eject continuously without any hand cranking. The Maxim gun represented such a revolutionary leap forward that within 2 decades, every hand-cranked machine gun design became obsolete. Maxim's recoil-operated mechanism was brilliantly simple. When the gun fired, recoil energy pushed the barrel backward against a spring, which cycled the bolt mechanism to extract the spent case, chamber a fresh round, and fire. Again automatically as long as the trigger remained pressed. Water cooling prevented barrel overheating during sustained fire, The result was a weapon capable of 500 rounds per minute with a single operator, compared to 3 operators required for a Gatling. The British Army adopted Maxims first, using them to devastating effect in colonial wars during the 1880s and 90s. American military adoption came later, in 1894, as the frontier era was already closing. However, several wealthy American industrialists and railroad companies purchased Maxims through private channels during the late 1880s, recognizing their superiority over hand-cranked designs for fixed defensive positions. The Maxim gun never played a significant role in frontier Indian wars simply because large-scale conflicts had ended by the time it became available. Its true impact came in later conflicts, like the Spanish-American War and World War I. However, the Maxim's invention during the late frontier period symbolized how rapidly military technology was advancing. The Wild West era ended partly because industrial weapons technology made traditional frontier warfare impossible. No cavalry charge or tribal war party could face automatic weapons and hope to succeed. The Maxim gun represented the future, and that future had no place for the old frontier. Number 3. The Colt Browning Model 1895. American genius perfects gas operation. While Hiram Maxim created the first practical automatic machine gun, American inventor John Moses Browning developed an alternative operating system that would prove even more influential for future weapons design. Browning's Model 1895, manufactured by Colt, was the first gas-operated machine gun, using hot gases bled from the barrel to cycle the action, rather than relying on recoil. This innovation made the weapon lighter and more efficient than Maxim designs. The Model 1895 featured a distinctive swinging arm beneath a barrel that captured gas pressure to drive the operating mechanism, giving it an unusual appearance that earned the nickname Potato Digger from soldiers who joked that low mounting would dig potatoes from the ground during fire. Despite this quirk, the weapon functioned superbly, achieving 600 rounds per minute reliability with air cooling rather than heavy water jackets. The U.S. Navy adopted the Colt Browning first, in 1896, recognizing its advantages for shipboard use, where the lighter weight and simplified cooling made it superior to Maxims. The Army followed suit, with the weapon seeing its first major combat during the Spanish-American War of 1898, technically outside the frontier era, but involving many veterans of Indian Wars campaigns. The Model 1895's significance for Wild West history lies in how it demonstrated American firearms innovation had reached world-leading status. Browning's gas operation principle would eventually power most 20th century automatic weapons, from machine guns to assault rifles. The fact that Browning developed this revolutionary system while the frontier was barely closed shows how the Wild West era directly contributed to modern military technology. The Colt Browning represented the transition point between frontier warfare and modern mechanized combat. Number 2. The Gatling Model 1883. Mechanical perfection at its absolute peak. While inventors like Maxim were developing automatic operation, Richard Gatling refused to rest on his earlier successes and continued refining his hand-crank design to achieve mechanical perfection. The Model 1883 Gatling represented the absolute pinnacle of what manual operation technology could achieve, incorporating the revolutionary Ackles drum feed system that eliminated earlier jamming problems and the Bruce feed mechanism that made ammunition supply continuous and reliable. This version could sustain accurate fire at 600 rounds per minute, matching contemporary automatic weapons, while offering superior reliability under harsh frontier conditions. The Model 1883 featured 10 barrels chambered in 4570 government, with each barrel individually replaceable for maintenance. The Ackles drum, a large circular magazine holding hundreds of rounds, attached to the gun's side and fed continuously as long as the operator turned the crank. This eliminated the gravity feed hoppers of earlier models that occasionally jammed when cartridges aligned poorly. The Bruce feed used a positive mechanical system that grabbed each cartridge and forced it into position, virtually eliminating ammunition-related stoppages. The U.S. Army designated the Model 1883 as its standard machine gun through the 1890s, deploying them at every major frontier installation and occasionally in mobile field operations. During the final years of Indian War's conflicts, Gatling Model 1883s proved absolutely unstoppable in defensive positions. Several engagements saw single Gatling crews holding off forces 10 times their number, with the weapon's sustained fire and reliability preventing any successful assault. The Model 1883 represented the endpoint of mechanical machine gun evolution, proving that hand-cranked designs could match automatic weapons in firepower, if not in convenience. Its continued use well into the 20th century testified to the fundamental soundness of Gatling's original rotating barrel concept, refined through decades of engineering improvements. Number 1. The Gatling gun. The complete legacy that defined frontier firepower. No single weapon symbolized the Wild West transformation from frontier wilderness to industrial civilization more than the Gatling gun in all its iterations. From the first experimental models of the early 1860s through the perfected designs of the 1890s, the Gatling represented American mechanical ingenuity applied to the brutal realities of frontier warfare. Richard Gatling's original motivation for inventing the weapon, as he later claimed, was humanitarian, believing that a single machine gun could replace dozens of soldiers and thus reduce army sizes and casualties. The actual battlefield results proved exactly opposite, as machine guns made warfare far deadlier than ever before. The Gatling gun's true impact on the Wild West went beyond tactical advantages. Its mere presence at frontier forts and settlements changed the strategic calculations of potential attackers. Native American war leaders, outlaws planning raids, and foreign powers considering incursions all had to factor in Gatling firepower when evaluating targets. Positions defended by Gatlings became essentially unassailable through direct assault, fundamentally altering frontier military architecture and tactics. The psychological dominance the Gatling achieved was perhaps more significant than its actual casualty figures. The sound of its mechanical operation, the visible stream of bullets, and the unstoppable nature of its fire created fear that transcended rational calculation. Warriors who had faced cavalry charges and artillery bombardments with courage often refused to assault Gatling positions, recognizing the futility. The Gatling gun became the symbol of industrial America's inevitable victory over frontier resistance, a mechanical representation of how technological advancement was closing the Wild West forever. Its evolution from crude early models to refined automatic weapons mirrored the frontier's own transition from wild territory to organized civilization. From the experimental failures of the Agar coffee mill to the mechanical perfection of the Model 1883 Gatling, machine guns transformed the American frontier in barely 30 years. These weapons weren't just tools of war. They were Industrial Revolution engines that demonstrated how mechanical innovation could overwhelm traditional warfare tactics. Every rotating barrel, every hand crank, every sustained fire position represented the unstoppable advance of modern technology into the Wild West. The frontier closed partly because machine guns made frontier warfare obsolete. No matter how skilled, brave, or determined, no force could charge into sustained machine gun fire and survive. That mathematical reality ended an era. These 15 machine guns didn't just fight in the Wild West. They helped end it, replacing frontier lawlessness with the ordered violence of industrial warfare. The deadliest weapon of the frontier wasn't the fastest draw or the sharpest shot. It was the machine that never missed, never tired, and never stopped firing until every threat was eliminated. So which of these early machine guns shocked you the most? Did you realize the Wild West had access to such devastating automatic firepower decades before World War I? The Gatling gun gets all the fame, but now you know there was an entire arms race happening across the frontier, with inventors competing to build the ultimate rapid-fire weapon. Drop your thoughts below. And if this deep dive into forgotten frontier technology opened your eyes, make sure you subscribe. We're just getting started uncovering the real Wild West that Hollywood never showed you.